Have you ever felt that quiet moment where her smile lingers just a second too long and you wonder, was that real? Or am I imagining it? Some connections are never spoken, they're felt. In glances held a heartbeat longer, in messages sent for no real reason, in the silence that somehow says everything. Tonight, I want you to listen closely because what you're about to hear isn't about chasing her, it's about recognizing the truth that's already there. By the end of this video, you'll see the signs you've been missing. And once you see them, you'll never unsee them again. Comment your location and let me know where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel if this message speaks to you. When a woman is attracted to you, the first place it shows up is not in her words, but in her behavior, and more specifically, in how that behavior changes when you're around. Human beings are remarkably consistent creatures. We develop social patterns, emotional rhythms, and habitual ways of showing up in the world. Attraction disrupts those patterns. It introduces a subtle tension between how someone normally behaves and how they suddenly behave in the presence of one specific person. That disruption is not accidental. It's psychological, and it's almost impossible to fake for long. You'll notice it in small shifts. Her posture becomes more alert. Her tone softens or becomes more animated. She may suddenly be more expressive, more thoughtful, or strangely more quiet than usual. None of this is planned. Attraction activates the nervous system. It heightens awareness. Her mind is processing you differently, and her body follows. This is why paying attention to contrast matters more than paying attention to isolated actions. Who she is with you versus who she is with everyone else tells the real story. There's also an element of self-consciousness that appears when attraction is present. She might adjust her hair, her clothing, or her position without realizing she's doing it. This isn't vanity, it's biology. When someone matters to us, we instinctively become more aware of how we're being perceived. Even confident, emotionally mature women experience this. Attraction doesn't remove composure, it quietly challenges it. The key is not to stare at these behaviors, but to calmly observe them without reacting emotionally. Awareness without neediness is what keeps attraction alive. Another important shift shows up in emotional availability. When a woman is attracted to you, she often becomes more responsive to your presence. She laughs more easily at your jokes. She listens more closely. She reacts more strongly, positively or negatively, to what you say. Indifference is emotionally flat. Attraction has texture. It creates highs and lows, engagement and curiosity. If your words land with her in a way they don't land with others, that's information worth noticing. What many men misunderstand is that attraction doesn't always look like enthusiasm. Sometimes it looks like restraint. A woman who is attracted but cautious may appear guarded, reserved, or even slightly distant at times. This isn't rejection, it's regulation. She's managing an internal experience she hasn't decided how to act on yet. The mistake is assuming attraction must always be loud. Often, it's quiet, controlled, and revealed only in moments where her guard slips. The deeper insight here is philosophical as much as it is psychological. Attraction reveals itself through inconsistency. When someone treats you differently, it's because you mean something different. Your job is not to force clarity or demand answers, but to remain grounded enough to notice the pattern without trying to control the outcome. When you do that, you naturally become more attractive, not because you chase signals, but because you respect them. And here's the reflection to leave with when you stop searching for verbal confirmation and start understanding behavioral truth. You move from guessing to knowing, and knowing changes how you show up. When a woman is attracted to you, one of the clearest patterns you'll notice is her instinctive desire to maintain connection. Not dramatic, not obvious, but persistent. Attraction doesn't always push people to declare feelings. More often, it pushes them to preserve access. She wants you close enough to matter, but not so close that she has to reveal more than she's ready to. This is where subtlety becomes meaningful. She reaches out without urgency, checks in without necessity, and keeps conversations alive even when there's no clear reason to continue them. You might notice this in the way interactions refuse to end naturally. A conversation winds down, but she adds one more thought. A message doesn't require a reply, yet she sends it anyway. These moments aren't accidents. From a psychological perspective, attraction increases cognitive availability. You occupy mental space. And when someone occupies mental space, the mind looks for small, socially acceptable ways to bring them back into focus. Connection becomes less about logistics and more about emotional continuity. What's important here is understanding the difference between effort and intention. She may not invest heavily or consistently, but the intention to remain present is there. She remembers details you mentioned casually. She references shared moments. She asks questions that don't move the conversation forward, but deepen it instead. This isn't small talk. It's relational anchoring. She's creating familiarity, which is one of the strongest precursors to emotional bonding. Philosophically, this speaks to how humans manage desire under uncertainty. When we're unsure how something will unfold, we don't rush toward resolution. We hover. We maintain proximity while keeping our options psychologically open. For many women, especially emotionally intelligent ones, this hovering is not manipulation, it's discernment. She's learning how you think, how you respond, how you show up over time. Connection gives her data, and data creates emotional safety. Men often misread this behavior because they expect attraction to look decisive. But attraction rarely begins that way. It begins as curiosity, then attachment to presence, then emotional investment. If she consistently keeps the door open through messages, shared humor, or moments of vulnerability, that door matters. Indifference closes doors. Attraction keeps them unlocked. There's also restraint embedded in this pattern. She may pull back occasionally, not to disappear, but to see if the connection still exists without her effort. This isn't a game, it's a test of mutual interest. Healthy attraction requires reciprocity, not pursuit. When you respond calmly and confidently, without chasing or withdrawing, you signal emotional stability. That stability makes the connection feel safe, and safety amplifies attraction. The deeper lesson here is not to overanalyze individual actions, but to recognize sustained patterns. Anyone can send one message. Anyone can be curious once. But consistent, low-pressure connection over time reveals intention more honestly than grand gestures ever could. When you respect that process and remain grounded in yourself, you naturally become someone worth staying connected to. And here's the thought to carry with you. When someone repeatedly chooses connection without obligation, it's because something about your presence feels valuable, and value, once recognized, tends to grow. When attraction deepens, it often introduces a new dynamic testing, not in a manipulative sense, but in a deeply human one. When a woman feels drawn to you, she becomes curious not just about who you are, but about how you respond under subtle pressure. These tests are rarely conscious. They show up as teasing comments, playful challenges, moments of emotional distance, or mild disagreement. What she's observing isn't your cleverness or your dominance, it's your emotional regulation. Attraction sharpens attention, and attention naturally seeks reliability. From a psychological perspective, testing is a way to assess safety and stability. When something matters, the mind wants to know if it can endure friction. She might question your opinions, delay a response, or lightly poke at your confidence to see if you become defensive or insecure. These moments aren't obstacles, they're invitations. How you handle them communicates far more than reassurance ever could. Calm curiosity signals strength. Overreaction signals fragility. One common misunderstanding is assuming these tests mean disinterest. In reality, indifference doesn't test, it disengages. Testing requires effort, and effort implies investment. If she didn't care how you reacted, she wouldn't create situations that require a reaction at all. What matters is not passing every test perfectly, but responding authentically without losing your center. Emotional composure is attractive because it suggests self-trust, and self-trust feels grounding to others. Philosophically, this dynamic reflects a broader truth about human connection. Attraction seeks alignment, not performance. When she challenges you, She's not asking you to become someone else. She's observing whether who you already are remains intact when tension appears. Do you listen without collapsing? Do you hold your perspective without aggression? Do you maintain warmth without over-explaining? These responses signal emotional maturity, which is one of the strongest predictors of long-term attraction. You may also notice moments where she pulls back slightly, less availability, shorter replies, a pause in momentum. This isn't withdrawal, it's calibration. She's watching to see if you chase validation or remain steady. This is where many men unknowingly lose ground. They attempt to regain certainty through over-communication or reassurance. But attraction doesn't grow through control, it grows through confidence in the unknown. When you allow space without anxiety, you demonstrate trust in yourself and in the connection. What's crucial is understanding that these tests are not about dominance or power. They're about emotional intelligence. The ability to stay present, respectful, and self-directed under mild uncertainty communicates something powerful, that your sense of worth is internal, not dependent on her response. That quality is rare, and rarity amplifies attraction. As these tests unfold, remember that your role is not to decode every move, but to remain aligned with your values. Speak honestly, set boundaries calmly, engage playfully without self-abandonment. Attraction doesn't ask you to prove yourself, it asks you to reveal yourself consistently. When you do that, the testing phase naturally dissolves into trust. And here's the reflection to leave you with. When you respond to uncertainty with self-respect instead of fear, you don't just pass the test. You become the kind of presence people choose to stay with.